how do we interpret the 666? Here is the golden rule of the church. We've said it, but we're going to repeat it again now in the words of St. Irenaeus. This is the golden rule of interpretation, the golden rule of understanding the book of Revelation, which most heterodox do not follow, right? They're trying to get ahead of it. They're always thinking, no, we have to get ahead of it. No, you can't get ahead of it in certain ways. Some ways you can, some ways you can't. It is safer and less dangerous to await the fulfillment of the prophecy than to attempt to conjecture and decode the possible names, especially since many names correspond to the aforementioned number. Again, St. Irenaeus repeating what we've said, but it bears repeating. St. Andrew says, again, this golden rule regarding the exact number and the other details written about him, meaning the Antichrist, time and experience will reveal to those who remain vigilant. In other words, Nepsis, which is vigilance or sobriety or watchfulness, which is key to the spiritual life in general. Right? It's in our best interest. The Lord gives us, and the St. John gives us, because that's what's good for us. We need this vigilance. It's essential for our spiritual life. If he were to tell us ahead of time, it would destroy our spiritual life. We would become lax. We would fall away. The opposite of what people think would happen, right? And actually, this is why everything is given for our salvation in Scripture. That's why it's always for us and for our salvation. Everything that Christ does, everything the church does, everything the Scriptures do, that's why it's there. It's not there for some other reason. Not there to teach us about church history or the creation of the world. That it happens in there. But first and foremost, all of that for the sake of salvation, for the sake of return, for the sake of communion. That's why, in that context, we learn about everything. So, vigilance and sobriety. It is through the spiritual experience and nepsis or vigilance of the heart that one ascertains that the fulfillment of the prophecy is at hand. What is nepsis or nepsis of the heart? A neptic, in the literal sense, is one who exercises sobriety in all things. His mind is clear. It is well known that the different passions cause a type of drunkenness, a type of stupor or confusion or dizziness or cloudiness. That's what the passions bring to us. Anxiety and not security and insecurity. The passions bring to us insecurity. They undermine trust. They undermine faithfulness. They undermine illumination and vision, right? So the cloudiness of the passions, the passions are the opposite of somebody who's dominated by the passions, is the opposite of one who is has nepsis, has watchfulness, vigilance, right? They darken the nous, as we said, and the heart. So that darkening through the passions. Thus, if we are free from this drunkenness of the passions and we maintain a state of nepsis, a clarity in our heart, then we can see every single thing clearly in order to interpret the events of history. And this is important for us. Those Christians who don't care about what's happening in the world, who are in their little world, lost in their own little world, are not good Christians. Now, we don't sit at the feet of Reuters. What's the next news event? That's the other extreme. But you cannot just be indifferent. You can't, the Christians are watchful. They're looking what's going on in the world. They're not indifferent to the world. St. Ignatius of Antioch says to St. Polycarp, study the times profusely, not just a little, profusely, in full expectation of the one to come. That's very interesting. Have you heard that before? Study the times. There are Orthodox Christians out there who say, don't bother yourself with the book of Revelation. Don't bother yourself with eschatology. Don't bother yourself with prophecies. Don't bother yourself with things that are coming. They're partly right, but that's the nature of delusion, is that you get it partly right. That's not the whole picture, folks. Listen to our saints. They're saying, be on guard, be watchful, be observant of the events of history. Know where you are from the alpha and the omega of history. Know where you are. That's essential to understand and to act appropriately, right? Study the times profusely in the full expectation of the one to come. So if you want eyes to see, you have to be vigilant and sober. So we keep a close watch on unfolding events. Second coming of Christ is chronologically connected with the appearance of the Antichrist, since Christ will come immediately after the appearance of Antichrist. Did you know that? That's a basic teaching. There will be no 1,000 years. the millennium heliasmos. Heliasm is a delusion. Right after the Antichrist is Christ and the end of history. When the Antichrist, the final Antichrist, right? There will be types. There have been types, maybe more types, but the final Antichrist, with all the signs, with all the things we read about here in the book of Revelation, that's the end of history. So when St. Ignatius exhorts us that we study the times profusely, it means to keep a close watch on the unfolding of events so that you can clearly see. All of this presupposes a neptic heart, a heart cleansed from passions, evils, weaknesses. In other words, to be a faithful man, a faithful person. All presupposes a watchful, vigilant, sober heart. That's essential. Without that, no matter what you do, pour over this, pour over that, spend your time listening to this podcast and that podcast, it ain't going to happen. It's not going to work. It's not going to help. You're going to make a mess of it. You're going to end up falling into some kind of trap. So, again, the time and experience will reveal to those who are neptic, who are watchful, who are vigilant. That's who's going to get and understand the 666, can understand the time of the approaching seal or mark and the signs of that approaching event. St. Andrew continues, Andrew of Caesarea, the one who has written the most on the book of Revelation, in the name of the Antichrist, if the name, rather, of the Antichrist needed to be known in advance, the one who saw it would have revealed it to us, as we've said, right? So that's why the elder says St. John knows the name. He believes that St. John knew the name. However, he says, St. Andrew goes on, the grace of God did not want to have the name of this destroyer included in Holy Scripture. As many names are found with this number, it would be the practice of logic to discover. In other words, it would be futile. It would be foolish. So that is to close on that aspect of things. We see clearly the name will be revealed when the time has come. Now, since the name is not revealed and the number should not be decoded, what's the point of having it in Scripture? We've said again and again, it's not going to be decoded. It's not going to be revealed. Could be many names. Why even state it, right? The purpose, he says, of this inscription will be made manifest during the fullness of time when the prophecy will be fulfilled. So that's one reason, because there will be a fulfillment eventually and a revelation. But as we said, it's for vigilance. When Christ told the disciples about things that would materialize in a few days, he would say, this is, if you want to understand why, then you got to go back to Christ and the disciples. Christ did tell the disciples. We go to the events of Holy Week, before the Passion, before the resurrection, crucifixion, resurrection. You see the Lord saying, this is going to happen. He says, I have told you before it takes place, so that when it does take place, you may believe. Why did the Apostle John tell us but not tell us? Why did he give us this number and not the name? So that when it takes place, not before, you will believe. So for those in those times, they will understand and believe, not beforehand. Another example, on Great Thursday evening, Christ said to his disciples, tonight the sheep will be scattered because the shepherd will be struck. Peter, tonight you will deny me 3 times. He tells them beforehand. And the rest of you will also deny me. I will resurrect in 3 days. Truly, truly, I say to you, you will weep and lament, but the world will rejoice. So the Lord had very good reason to say, I have told you these things so that when they come to pass, you'll believe. They were going to go through trials, tribulations, denials, and that prophetic word will then bring them, help them, and make them again, in the case of Peter at least, disciples, believers, servants of the Lord. So it's always for us and for our salvation. Everything functions that way. The giving of what he gave and the withholding of what he did not give is for us and for our salvation in this case.